Don't worry, Khatep. Big mean Boris can't hit you here when you're surrounded by Snack Knights. I mean, it's kind of hilarious how tiny his chariot is in comparison to these massive Snack Knights. But anyway, another replay from Koops here. He's taking Tomb Kings into Empire, which is certainly a very tough matchup. Empire is probably one of the worst matchups for Tomb Kings, at least from my perspective as an Empire player. Largely because Empire has excellent armor-piercing missiles, really cost-effective infantry, pretty good chaff clearing tools, not the best, but good enough certainly to deal with skeletons. I mean, you have Burning Head, right? That's largely enough. But anyway, Tomb Kings definitely still can do something in this matchup. Necropolis Knights I love here. The Tomb Prince also to protect Khatep. It's pretty good. Khatep in general, you know, a lot of people obviously focus in on the DJ setup, you know, the full stage kit, which is understandable. The casket of EDM Jams is quite strong in a number of niche situations, taking out elite infantry, such as, you know, for example, greenskins. Against the Empire, though, with that counter-artillery situation, it's really not ideal. The Chariot, on the other hand, is the fastest and the tankiest mount for Khatep. 80 armor, also, you know, 74 speed, gives him a much higher degree of escapability than any of his other mounts. 75 charge bonus, also not too bad. 350 weapon strength, not a complete pushover. 28 bonus versus infantry is actually pretty solid, so he can maraud over some, lines a la Sirtha Ek. These skeleton chariots are attempting to just run through front of spears, which is a little bit rough, but yeah, for the rest of the build here, about to get burning headed. We've got some skeleton spears. Now, Card Warriors will trade decently into stage troops, and they also kind of pad your numbers a little bit here without having to overinvest in the completely useless skeletons. On the flip side, we've got plenty of Flagellants, Sigmar's Sons in the center. The Firecaster is getting absolutely mobbed by Carrion, so this is great, especially I think some of the Carrion might have even got the anti-large buff from Khatep. If that's the case, I mean, that's a million IQ play, something I've done many times myself in the past. Goon and Air Caster with Carrion carrying that anti-large, but Boris comes to the ground here. He's going to try and shut down some of those chariots. We've also got some Empire Knights, Silver Bullets in the back, a few Outriders as well. So let's get in close on this melee engagement. We'll follow the Snack Knights and the Tomb Prince as they sweep out, try and get after these Knights of Blazing Sun here, caught up in some Skeleton Warriors. Going to be a really nice situation for the Snack Knights. Necropolis Knights in general are one of the better units for Tomb Kings right now, and especially in this matchup, they'll trade well with all the Empire Cavalry, pretty much, even Demigryph Knights in the right situation. And yeah, just in general do give you some kind of heavy punching power. A little bit blobbed up on the infantry here, but given that the Burning Head was already kind of pulled out, I didn't highlight it too much, but it did turn traitor and kill some Flagellants as well, as it tends to do. But that's fine. A lot of the value is concentrated in this kind of Goon squad, though, so nice little rear hit on this Spearman. I mean, you might say that's a miss micro, but it's like a less than 400 cost unit, so you really should be prioritizing your micro on like these expensive cavalry, on Boris and whatnot, but both players are a little bit blobbed up here. Not too much punish at the moment, although Khatep does have his Sandstorm ability, so we'll have to watch for that. Boris getting caught up here is a really good situation for the Tomb Kings. You know, the Necropolis Knights can get the poison, they can get the surround here, start to get some really good attacks. Anti-large AP on the Tomb Prince. He's got Tomb Strike active for that extra melee attack going up to 65. Didn't really put the Tomb Prince in the top 5 of my melee heroes, which I still have not actually made the video ranking the melee heroes yet. I would probably, I don't know, it's tough. You know, he's very good, but just the lack of armor in general and the kind of lowish stats are not great. He also doesn't have the best weapon strength in the world. We'll probably have to talk about that another time, but certainly he's very useful here, helping to go after Boris. Snack Knights, again, those little hits with the poison certainly is nice. And there's the, oh my god, Khatep. I mean, his skeletons were surrounded. They were all going to die there anyway, but that was a brutal Sandstorm. Just routed a huge pocket of the Empire army. Basically, most of the non-unbreakable troops just straight up routed from there, and the Carrion are now going to be able to chase some of them off. Koops in general been doing a great job using those Carrion to good effect, but let's see, can he actually see Boris off the field here? That is a big question. The rest of the army is very quickly crumbling. Ushabti summon has already been pulled out, and it's definitely fighting these Flagellants and whatnot. Balance power pretty heavily in the Tomb King's favor at this point, as Boris is low, and if Boris is dead, I mean, Khatep with the Necropolis Knights can probably kill the rest of the army. The Necropolis Knights can kill Empire Knights, and Khatep can just kill all the infantry. with the Tomb Prince, of course, helping to contribute in both situations. But Koops here, I think if he had kept the Tomb Prince underneath Boris, he might have been able to actually push him off here, but a mistake potentially letting Boris come back. He's going to get that fat 8 hit points per second regeneration and be able to potentially get back in this game and make a difference. So we'll see, though. I mean, Carrion still out here finishing off the silver bullets. Necropolis Knights basically untouched still. Incantation of Protection, Neru's style is going to help give them a little bit of extra physical resistance here, make them even tankier. I mean, Khatep and the Tomb Prince also both still completely healthy at this point, so there's quite a goon squad of Tomb Kings here, no doubt. See what they can do. Man, I love Khatep's attack animations too, like just this little magic blast out of the side of the chariot, little drive-by. Like, man, Khatep's such a gangster. He also is not weak to fire, the only Tomb King's Lord who is not weak to fire, and on the chariot that actually does matter because with 80 armor and no fire weakness, he's arguably the most resilient against Knights of the Blazing Sun charges. I mean, you could definitely say that Cetra, just by value of having the most HP, is going to be the most resistant to them, but, you know, let's imagine that Khatep actually has something over him. And with the spell casting as well, I mean, not that Empire has a lot of activatable abilities at this point. I mean, everything... I guess Boris does have the charge bonus ability, but let's see. Tomb Prince is going to try and counteract Boris here. Does get a hit there, perhaps. Yeah, Boris having to stay away. A little bit of a miscast damage on Khatep. Probably blasted a few of those Empire troops anyway, but the Necropolis Knights have started taking some pretty significant damage just from being saturated in all of this infantry. I mean, they are still low model count monstrous cavalry. After all, 18 unit models, and they are quite large, but you can see how, even though they look big, they don't actually occupy that much space. The Empire troops can kind of get in here and still surround them. Not quite as well as like a Demigryph Knight, but still well enough that they're getting hits from all angles. You know, the Outriders also very critically setting up a nice little firing line here to get some armor-piercing damage in. And there goes the Necropolis Knights, having generated massive value already. Did they do enough? I mean, basically all of the heavy cavalry for the Empire is gone. All that's left in terms of large armored units is Boris. He's going to go after those Carrion, try and spring those Outriders loose. And let's see, Khatep still got some anti-infantry potential left. There's probably still at least one more Sandstorm in the pocket. He also does have the Curse, which is an ability that you might often see cut, but if he goes below 50% HP, that's going to do a big AoE burst damage, direct damage, massive amounts, and probably will finish off a number of these units here. But the Sandstorm, there's the Curse as well, just hits literally almost every unit that Empire has still left on the field, and if it leaves... you know, Khatep and the Tomb Prince alone here against just Boris, I don't know. With the Outriders still, it's going to be tricky. Silver Bullets also making their way back over. They've got 30 models, still plenty of ammunition left, and they are stocked, so the Tomb Kings really have no idea that they're still out there. But, oof. Tomb Prince certainly doing his best. Khatep also still out here blasting. The unbreakable troops of the Empire are definitely doing a great job kind of holding them up. That does allow these Outriders a really nice firing line to just get in here and provide that little bit of extra DPS. Unfortunately, the Carrion do get caught up by Boris, which is not an ideal situation, certainly. But Tomb Strike active for the Tomb Prince is going to terrify away the Empire Knights and the Knights of the Blazing Sun. Sigmar Sun's obviously unbreakable. They're just going to stand and fight. But the Outriders here, still 40 unit models. Super critical, 10 ammunition left. They can fire while advancing, so as they're pursuing here, they're going to be popping off with these little repeater carbines here. The little revolvers, so to speak. Revolving rifles, a little pump action. That's so cool, man. Yes, Empire Outriders, definitely one of my favorite units, as you should know. Let's see. Tomb Prince does have a missile block chance. He's going to get in here. He's got his charge bonus active. Whacks one of them down just straight up. Multiple decapitation. Splash attack. Yeah, he's just staying focused on the Outriders. Unfortunately, Khatep does crumble away there, which is going to be a big problem. But let's fast forward a little bit as the Tomb Prince chases around these Outriders. Boris is now going to come for him. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe he decides to fade away. There might have been another unit there I just missed, but... yeah, unfortunately for the Tomb Prince at this point, he's caught in a really rough situation where He's going to get pulled in multiple different directions and shot at from multiple different directions. Empire players setting up some overlapping lines of fire here. He uses Curse of Jaff to try and rampage Boris in here and also debuff his melee attack. Actually finishes Boris off, but the Outriders, the super clutch Outriders, just are too much to bear. And of course, the Sigmar Sons are still alive, so there's that. What a game, man. Well played to both. A little bit of minor mistakes on both sides, but honestly, down to the wire. A very, very fun game. So big thanks to Coops for sending that one in. Got a few from him and Wolfsbane. Fun stuff. I mean, Khatep, man, on the chariot. 288 kills. Just absolute anti-infantry beast. And he was protected well enough from the air snipe. Generally, you know, by the Necropolis Knights. Ended up really being the missiles at the end of the day that were able to take care of him. And Coops, you know, a lot of the Carrion did play very well. The Chariots could have been a little bit better, but it's just kind of how things go sometimes. A lot of the anti-infantry damage came from other sources, but the Tomb Prince also quite nice. Necropolis Knights, obviously, 2,500 damage value, almost 10,000 damage dealt. And Nekar Warriors do okay. I mean, they're not really... They're basically just like glorified skeleton warriors. There's an argument to be made that maybe you should take just horsemen in their place. Well, what are they, 550 points? We'll have to look at that in just a second here. But anyway, for Wolfsbane, great job with the Empire, and, you know, staying calm despite the initial issues with his characters. Outrider is able to just wreck shop in the late game, setting up some really nice firing positions. Knights of Blazing Sun definitely took a beating, but we're able to hold out enough. Sigmar Sons and Flagellants also fantastic in any undead matchup. Spearmen also trade really nice into, I guess, what, chariots or skeletons? Or I'm not really sure exactly, but they all pay for themselves, which is beautiful. Anyway, what was I going to say about Khatep on the chariot? And just in general, oh yeah, Nekar Warriors. We're going to look at their cost. Probably I would say just taking more horsemen would have been better, because then you would have had a couple of more units to chase those routing troops. Like the, the silver bullets, maybe a couple of those spear infantry wouldn't have been around in the late game as well. It's definitely a tough matchup, but I do think it's one that's winnable for the Tomb Kings. And I do like the approach that was taken there. Would have been maybe a little bit more vulnerable to cannons. Khatep certainly can get blown up by a cannon pretty quickly, but also, you know, can try and dodge shots. He's relatively small target in comparison to something like a big Cetra Kitty, so there's that. He's also relatively cheap as well. You really don't have to pay too much for him. And yeah, I mean, you can go Sandstorm. I've had some fun before and taken the double Vortex, which is, again, fun. Probably better to just spam the cheap spells as much as possible in order to get as many procs of a Restless Dead as you can, which is not, it's, you know, you're really asking for a lot, but yeah, the Tomb Prince also quite nice in this matchup, and the Necropolis Knights. I mean, probably, I'd have to think about it a little bit, but I might say the Necropolis Knights are the best monstrous cavalry in the game right now. Maybe I've actually given the title to someone else already. Can't remember. My mind changes all the time anyway, so I'm just going to say right now, currently, I do feel in this video that Necropolis Knights are probably the best monstrous cavalry in the game. I mean, great weapon strength, poison's awesome, their mass is fantastic, charge bonus is okay, but they're undead, and so they were not going to rout, they're just going to crumble right. It's interesting, 110 armors, maybe not as good as some of others, but certainly better than something like Stag Knights. But anyway, I've rambled on long enough for this one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.